Welcome to Politically Connected, a podcast on everything politics. And I'm your host, Diana Ngao,
aka Madam Speaker, and I am Chaka.
aka the Bishop. So, Chaka, are you politically connected?
I think we're all politically connected because politics affects all of us. But whether we know politicians and elected leaders, we've brushed shoulders with a few. Are you politically connected?
I'd say yes and no. Politically connected in the sense of have I brushed shoulders with politicians? Have I worked for some? Yes. But I'd say no because sometimes there are layers.
Yes,
There are so many layers. It's like an onion.
Yes,
Yeah.
there are levels.
There are levels to this. By the way, that was initially one of the names I had proposed for this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
There are levels to this. So, the Politically Connected podcast, um, we thought about this because of the number of things that have happened in the recent history of Kenya. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking in the year of 2024. And the month is July. I mean, August. Oh my goodness.
It's August.
It's August, but the cold is like July
And it's
cold.
almost over.
Yeah. But yeah, and we've been really just thinking about this idea of being able to share some of our experiences, especially in the political landscape, and our ideas, and also have some really great guests who can make you guys, the audience, feel politically connected. Yeah.
Also to be part of the conversation, and to be part of shaping the narrative, taking ownership of our politics, not spectating. Because I think part of the problem is that we've often viewed what's happening, being told this is where we're going, this is what is supposed to happen, these are the issues, and we rarely get a chance to chime in other than when going to the ballot, if at all. Yeah, and if what that vote you cast is actually counted.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think being part of the conversation and helping shape the narrative.
Yeah, I think in the most recent history of Kenya, we had some sort of civic awareness or awakening. Let me call it an awakening. It seemed the people who never used to interact with news, guys who don't sit down to watch the 9 p.m. news or interact with the news on Twitter, okay, X, it's formerly Twitter, um, are now the ones who are like on the beat. They know exactly what's happening, where it's happening. They're pushing for change. And I mean, I'm guessing this is the level of awakening. Many countries or many countries have been hoping for to be able to push to the next level. Yeah.
And there's a temptation to go right into discussing those exciting events and the things that happen. But before we get there, this is apparently our first episode.
Yes, it is.
But is it really? Is it really?
Well,
Maybe there's a reason why you were saying it's July.
my guys, tumeshoot hii episode ya kwanza kama mara 5. Mainly because so much has really happened in Kenya, like really so much that made us even question like how the hell
Where do we start?
Yeah, where do we start and how did we get here? So every time we record an episode, something else happens and we realize, oh my goodness.
Like the last time we were shooting, was the day cabinet was being dissolved.
Yeah.
We were just about to start recording, and then address from State House, and it boggles the mind.
Yeah, completely. And we actually, of course, we had already pre-planned the kind of discussion we wanted to have on the podcast. And just when we were starting and doing the intro, the president walks up
Our
on the
favorite
screen.
politician.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, I have dissolved parliament and Me and Chaka look at each other like, okay, so what are we discussing?
Cabinets.
Oh yeah, cabinet.
Cabinets.
Cabinet, sorry.
Yeah, but Kenyans did dissolve parliament. Nituba Mekwama and peace.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very interesting times we're living in, really.
Indeed.
Yeah. And I think this is even more timely, having more political discourse in different formats of media apart from news. Because a lot of political discourse has been happening on news platforms like the morning talk shows, evening talk shows, the news itself. I think it's about time.
Yeah, and it's like they follow a script. I think if we're honest, they are part of the problem without going too much into the offensive. But there's a reason why the media is a part of the state.
Yeah.
So it is a national institution that should also be held to account.
Indeed.
And we need to have an honest conversation about it. But again, we're going back into the issues. This is episode 1. Let's dip our toes in past. Madam Speaker,
Yes.
how did you get here?
You're asking me how did I get on this chair, or
Yes.
how did I get to be sitting on this chair
Yes.
talking about politically connected?
Yes.
Wow.
And being passionate about the issues of country.
To be honest, I feel like everything I was doing, even prior before I started working in the political landscape, like was going to lead me here.
Mm,
I when I look back, I just see the dots connecting.
right.
Yeah, that it was an eventuality. It was not a matter of if, it was just when the opportunity would.
Destiny.
Yeah.
What's your earliest memory of political awareness, of being politically aware?
I think it was leading up to the 2002 general elections. I think the mood in the country, I think I was in primary 3 or 4, class 3 or 4, maybe in class 2, I can't remember quite well. But I remember the mood of the country. And then I remember the flyers of Kibaki with so Kibaki on one side, and then Uhuru Kenyatta, a very young Uhuru Kenyatta, guys. A young Uhuru Kenyatta on this side, and then on Kibaki's side is tried, tested, and everything. Like, that's what I remember. That was the first time I'm like, oh, this a president, and everyone seems to be so excited. And also, that's when my awakening of Moi came in, although I had tasted your maziwa ya nyayo. But really, I feel like, I think it's either 2001 or 2002 that I'm like, okay, in your siasa, because everyone was singing yote yawezekana. It was quite a really, really electric mood. I remember during campaigns, my cousins would be all put into one house so that the parents can go and either campaign or whatever they were doing. And we always used to, especially in Nairobi when they're in Huru Park, we always want to switch on the TV and see really what's happening. Like, is he president yet? Because we had no conscience of a general election. We were just waiting after every event.
Yeah, and it was around school holidays because
Yeah.
of the time elections used to happen in December. The mood was infectious. It was hard not for even young children to be roped into the excitement and
Yeah.
the clamor.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
one reminds me that I participated, by the way, in the past protest, the Reject Finance Bill protest. And
Kweli siasa ilikuwa damu yako.
ndamu, guy, eti ndamu. Ndani.
Kwa ndani ya damu.
On the first day, 18th of June, it was me and a friend of mine were in town. And we got dispersed very quickly. But then now, when we're looking for the rest of the crowd, we find a whole crowd. There were so many people walking towards, is it Nyayo House? Like from 680, they were just walking. So we joined the crowd and they started singing. Guess which song? Yote yawezekana.
Full circle. And interestingly, almost 22 years later.
Yeah, so I feel like I was having such a nostalgic moment because I was quite excited to join. But of course, the last name is different. But I was so excited to join, and I remember there's even a video of me waving my hand here because it was more for me. It was more reminiscent to 2002 than it was for what was currently happening. Yeah.
And it says a lot that I think that's part of the frustration of Kenyans that we've seemingly come so far and yet we're still dealing with the same issues.
Yeah.
Because many people have said our current president is a reincarnation of the late Mzee, or an even more
Yeah.
ruthless one.
A
But
Moi 2.0.
Moi 2.0. But it's not surprising since he was a student of Moi. I usually say he was a student of Moi Index 001.
Index 001.
Yes.
And for you, Chaka, what was your earliest memory of politics?
My earliest memory of politics is 1997.
Mm.
And not that I was involved in the politics or was too aware of what was happening. I remember being in the sitting room.
Guys, you can tell the age
That's-
difference. True, true.
Or maybe my memory is just it was such an interesting moment. We were at home. My parents and my uncle had come to visit my mom's brother, and two memories I have from then is one. Uh, during the elections, during the day, I wanted to watch cartoons. Again, it was school
It
holidays.
was school holidays.
But my mom kept insisting on changing the channel to, watch music, this thing going on, elections, and I was very frustrated. And I remember also around the same time now when my uncle came to visit in the evening, we're sitting, in the sitting room, and they're having a heated debate about politics. And I remember my uncle talking about this man called Kibaki
Ah,
and really, being excited about him. And at one moment, he turns to me and he asks me, "Hey, Chaka, for you,
what do you
who
think
do you
would win?"
prefer? Who do you prefer as the candidate?" And because I just heard him talking about Kibaki, and I was like, Kibaki.
Yeah.
And he's like, he tells my parents, "You see, even the child knows."
Yeah. So,
So yeah, that's my earliest memory. 2002 comes around, and that time it was a transition from class 7 to class 8.
okay.
So during school holidays that year, we were still in school because now we were about to be candidates.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There used
so
to be holiday school.
holiday school where you start the curriculum early.
Mm.
So I remember because it was such a key year, an exam year, being so aware and having um, uh, thinking about the exams and these politics going on. So I do remember also. I do remember also being aware of what was happening on news.
Yeah.
The teachers are talking about it.
Yeah.
Parents are talking about. Everywhere you go, everyone is talking about this.
Yeah.
And
Election.
Moi has been in power for so long, and because at the time we were also doing GHC.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so there was
Guys.
this,
What were social studies?
there was history and civic education.
Yeah.
So there was some history and things we were learning about how the country
Yeah.
works. So there was some political
Oh, wait,
awareness.
the C in GHC
Yes.
is civic education, not
Yes.
CRE.
No, CRE was separate.
Oh yeah, it was GHC, CRE.
Yes, because we used to sit the exam at the same time for like
yeah.
90 minutes.
Yeah, because
But
there's a
C was
section
civic
of
education, yeah.
CRE.
So there's injustice being done today in terms
Yeah.
of, because we had a chance to have that awareness from
Yes.
so early on.
That's true.
Yeah, but now we hear about civic education, it's really about civil society.
Yeah, to do the job.
To do the job, and In school, it's been pushed aside like it's something that's not
I
important.
actually think that civic education needs to be in the curriculum.
Exactly.
And civic education includes even telling us how to be a more active citizen. An
Exactly.
active citizen meaning someone who's more compliant in terms of how do we pay our taxes, all the obligations that need us to be working together with government.
Yes.
You can't just get out of school, then all of a sudden you understand this whole animal that's scary.
Exactly.
You're just told, okay, and I will register upate pin. Alafu,
Yes, yeah. And it's not just about for purposes of elections or electoral politics. It's about citizenship. What does it mean to be a good citizen?
yeah.
In the same way that you're told to work hard so you can get a good job, or how to be a friendly neighbor, member
Yeah.
of society, there's also an important element that we're missing out on. What does it mean to be a good citizen? We focus so much on our leaders and what we expect from them,
Actually, that's true.
but what do we expect from ourselves and from each other?
That's true.
Yeah.
I remember after the 202 moment, there was such a hopeful energy
The country,
in the country.
Yeah.
Like they
the
were,
most optimistic country.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. At least for me, then I thought that's how things were. The excitement and the energy, I thought that's just the way things are supposed to be. And I remember how Mishuku came in, Mishuki, who was the Minister of Transport under the Kibaki government, and he came in and they used to call them Mishuki roads. And all of a sudden, you're not standing in a crowded KBS. Because I remember my mom and I used to take public transport, and I used to hate it because the KBSs were like this, and then there was nothing for designated smoking areas.
Yeah.
Anyone who wants to smoke can just remove.
Yeah.
It was hectic, and just when Mishuki came, there was a semblance of order.
In fact, the KBSs were better. If you went to Shags, the mats there were pickups with, a container at the back, and there's what was called javelin. People are sitting facing each other.
Each other,
I
yeah.
can't remember what they call it, face me something.
Yeah.
And then people are seated, and then there are people who are standing, but they are bending.
Oh my gosh,
Now,
because it's like
yes.
covered.
Yeah, and they're packed all the way in. Now, imagine when the mat stops, and then mwenye ako ndani anafaa kutoka.
So,
Yeah, and it used to be so packed, they used to lean back like this.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah,
the door is
yeah.
open
I
and there's
remember
still
that.
people holding on.
Yeah.
There are people on top with mizigos, and you don't have smooth roads
Yeah.
as well.
Oh yeah, actually,
So-
yeah. It was in Kibaki era that we saw
changes.
a lot of changes.
Yeah.
But I remember, I to be honest, then I thought that is how things are supposed to work. Like the
Yeah.
excitement, how everyone was so hopeful. It seemed like everyone just wanted to work with the government.
Yeah.
There was no tension. It just seemed like now I could call it a utopic.
And I think it reads like a tragic love story, to use
It's true.
that phrasing, because coming from such hope and excitement to such depth of disappointment.
Yeah.
Because the disappointment is palpable. You
Yeah.
could see the anger on the streets, So, and, within 20 years, coming from such hope and excitement to such anger and disappointment, children who weren't even born in
Yeah, in
2002
2002 are the
have
ones.
a greater expectation than the people who are alive in 2002 when we knew change was possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that deserves an episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Chaka. What influence? Do you remember the first time you voted?
I do. I remember the first time I was supposed to vote.
Oh, okay.
And that was the 2013 elections.
Okay.
But I happened to be gallivanting around the world, so I wasn't around during
During election
elections.
time.
But I remember that time, the gift of the internet and YouTube and legacy media news channels had started streaming and posting clips
Yeah,
on YouTube.
online.
So I was always on YouTube following what's happening, following the politics, and
Okay.
so the first time I voted was in 2017.
Okay. What would you say influenced? Okay, if you had voted in 2013, when you had
Yes.
just gotten your voter's card,
Yes.
what do you think it would have influenced your vote? Would it be what you're reading on the news, what you're hearing, or would it be based on, you see, like the way your uncle asked you, who do you think would win? Then you say Kibaki, and the reason you said Kibaki is because it seemed that he talked so much about this great man that you could not see any other
Yeah.
candidate. So
What should have influenced my vote? I'm trying to think of that objectively because I'm very clear about who I would have voted for at the time.
really?
But I think by this time, we were a lot more politically aware.
Okay.
So, and already believing in issue-based politics. Because by this time, we're global citizens, so you're also seeing what's happening in the politics around the world. This is the election after the Obama moment,
Yes.
and which captured everybody's imagination.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was from Kenya. So there's the politics of hope, politics of change, politics of policies. Again, this was also the election coming after very critical moments. 2007 in the country, having that PEV, post-election violence, but also the global financial crisis.
Oh yeah, in 2008.
Yeah, so and by this time I'm already in university as well. So idealism is, deep, in my heart, and discussing. And again, it's the first election under the 2010 Constitution.
Yeah.
And though I did not participate in this mandamano directly in the streets, in 2010, I was at Uhuru Park when
during the promulgation.
I was deep in the crowd. My parents thought I was crazy, going to,
To a
join
public
the
rally.
crowd
Yeah.
and be there. But I was there standing the whole time, one's on the hill, and your legs are like this.
Yeah.
And the excitement was, and it was a cold day, but around us it was hot.
You can't
Why?
feel you can't feel
You
the
feel the
cold.
heat because of how packed we are.
Yeah.
So up here you're feeling cold, down here you're feeling zoto hot around you.
Ah.
So that was very exciting. And I remember I even did an article about the promulgation.
Oh, really?
And the title of that article was, I will tell my children I was there.
Oh.
And the reason I really wanted to attend that promulgation was like, how many times does a country get a new constitution?
Yeah.
When would be the next time that would have such a moment? So I was aware it felt like an independence moment come again.
Yeah.
To be able to participate in it. But then after the promulgation, I remember talking about it with a lecturer of mine, and he asked me a question that stayed with me for a long time.
Yeah.
He asked me, that's great, but will the courts enforce it?
Really?
Yeah.
He could see it back then.
Because those are the critical questions. Yes, you have this document with all these great principles and issues.
Yeah.
But what you do with it
Yeah.
is what is most important. And you can see in the years since then, those are some of the things we've been struggling with. Implementation.
I actually think that's how we got to where we're at now in 2024 is the lack of actual and dedicated implementation of the 2010 Constitution. Because I feel, or rather, we hear around the world that they say, the 2010 Constitution is one of the best constitutions in the world.
Progressive, yes.
Most progressive.
Yeah.
So the drafters of that constitution had aspired for a Kenya greater than where we are right now.
Yeah, and when we talk about the drafters, a key thing about the 2010 Constitution is Kenyans were part of the drafting.
Yeah.
Because of the process that was involved. We take public participation lightly, and there's a case in court every other day about public participation. But that time, you had delegates from across the country.
Yeah, and farmers.
Different cross sections of society tabling issues. You had very prominent Kenyans, prominent in terms of intellectual import. You had the Yashfal guys, you had the Professor Okoth Ogendos, you had you had so many, the best of Kenyan society contributing to this.
That's true.
And
And just remember also the changing the constitution didn't only just start in 2010. Like we arrived at in 2010, but really it started way back.
yes,
Way back.
yes, yes.
Yeah, it started almost, I could say 20 years before.
Yeah. I could even argue that it started really with the Lancaster House.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because some of the issues that were being debated at Lancaster House still haunt us to today. There's a pool of the kind of governance system.
Yeah.
That time those stories of federalism versus centralized government, and then you come full circle to the 2010 Constitution, and we're discussing devolution. And even right now, we're still rethinking it, thinking of combining counties and
together.
So it's not even that the current constitution is perfect, but that issue of implementation is so key.
So do you think we should, Baba, who is Raila Amolo Odinga, we call him Baba here in Kenya, the father of
Modern democracy.
modern democracy. I was about to say something else.
It also starts with an M.
Anyway, yeah. He recently said that we need to go back to Bomas.
Yes.
And for me, that statement was like ahead of its time. Because how do we talk about changing a constitution that we've barely implemented?
Yes.
There's no parliament that has been adhered to the 2/3 gender rule. So how are we talking about changing the constitution when we've not even tried to implement?
But there's a tension here, because on the one hand, I think that's part of why when there was talk of a multi-sectoral task force, talk of dialogue, the Kenyan youth and Gen Zs and millennials were like, there's nothing to discuss, implement what is there, do the right thing. But on the other hand, there are some valid issues that require conversation. And I think it's just a question of, okay, implement what is right for now, including things to do the finance bill, taxes, and the like. And then we can have a conversation about what needs to be.
I'm not saying we can never implement the constitution, but it just seems so tone deaf. And especially when you're talking about changing the constitution, and the clamor for that change is not coming from the people, it's coming from the political class that seem to be benefiting from the lack of implementing the constitution. So I'm there with the Gen Zs. A lot of my friends and even my colleagues at work think I'm a Gen Z.
You are. You are. You are.
But really, I really understand. I never really thought I'd be this active in politics until I went for the Mandela Washington Fellowship. And I saw how their politics, it was a political year because they were coming up to the 2020 election where Trump now became president. So I went in 2019 and I was in Iowa. And Iowa is also a hotbed for American politics. So we were a swing state. So we were able to interact with the community there, with the politicians there. And one of my professors, she was called Dr. Deborah. Unfortunately, she passed away. Dr. Deb took us to the state county, which is like a county government of there. And I remember standing in that room and thinking, Yani, this is where these guys make these laws, and I was just thinking about the situation back at home, where our now president had already started campaigning, and to me, I was like, hey, I cannot even imagine him as president. So when I came back, of course, getting into politics didn't happen immediately. COVID happens.
But before you came back, there's something you're not doing. There's something you're leaving out. You had an opportunity
Yeah.
to sit with
Yeah.
and submit petitions to the next president of the US, and you were where?
Sleeping.
And you had a chance to meet who?
So let me tell this story, and it pains me anytime I say it. Part of the things that our university did is also really engage us with political players, and because it was leading up to an election year, and Iowa is a swing state, that is where they start also their campaigning. So Bernie Sanders, I actually went for a Bernie Sanders campaign. It was a really small event where they put in a hall. And let me tell you what also inspired me. The
Yes.
people who were running that whole event were not more than 19 years old. And they knew everything. They could tell you his policies, they could tell you his manifesto, they could tell you how to get involved. And to me, I'm like, me, nilikuwa nafanya nini kama 18-year-old? Actually, I didn't even know who to vote for. You know, whatever my parents would say that tunaenda hii side, ndani, mimi pia. Kama ni 6 piece, I didn't have that awareness or that confidence to make that independent choice.
That's the cost of not having civic education.
Exactly, but
Yeah.
this young, 19 years old, at that time I think I was 25, but I was just looking at them in such awe. Anyway, leading up to, so that was one. I was able to attend and even meet Bernie Sanders. I even have a picture. And then later on, I think like 2 days later, because the activities were so back to back, it was a Saturday. And my friends are like, oh, Kamala Harris, who is a Democrat, is holding like a barbecue style something, a meet and greet. And me, I'm like, guys, I gotta sleep.
Ungekula
I
nyama
am
choma
tired.
na Kamala Harris
Imagine.
na ukalala.
Imagine, nikasema I gotta sleep. So they came back to show me pictures of her. And it was a friend of mine called Sarah. Sarah was from Sudan, but now she's based in Canada. And Sarah comes and quickly wakes me up and shows me a picture. Oh, look, I met Kamala. She's such a nice.
Could have been you.
And me, Nico, up and like, okay, no. It didn't really resonate to me then until now when she became vice president. And then Sarah, of course, on Instagram is like, cheeky, I met Kamala Harris. And I'm like, hey, that is how opportunity just passes you by like this. Yeah. But really, those are moments that made me realize that something is missing here in Kenya. And what is missing is a youth. And I'm so glad that it was in my lifetime that we saw the youth actually stand up, because in 2020 I also, by the way, this maandamano, it was not my first time.
Ala.
Mimi ni mtu wa tear gas, lakini si tear gas Mondays ya PM. In 2020 there was a lot of police brutality because of the lockdown.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's when now for sure it really just pushed me into that area, because I was just sitting there and I'm trying to understand, like, it's a global health issue.
Yes.
Why must the police clamor down at people who are trying to also get home? And now you're putting everyone together, and yet COVID is spread, is an airborne disease. And just the stories that were coming out. So COVID happened March, the lockdown. I remember the first lockdown was 13th of March, 2020. And then now July 7th was Sabasaba Day, which was a commemoration of the Sabasaba Day in the 1990. And some social justice centers had organized Sabasaba March for Our Lives, and it was to really just protest against the police brutality.
Yes.
Because police were even going into neighborhoods. Something that, by the way, we're also seeing today, which is so unfortunate. So I remember going, and we were meeting at the Roland Gala statue over there on Moy Avenue, and we were like two of us. I'm saying two of us compared to what we saw. We were quite a number. And tulinyamazishwa hivi tu. Like the moment we arrived, they were already waiting for us, and tear gas dispersed, and some people were even picked. And that's where you see the video of Wanjiranjiru, who's such a fierce human rights defender. A young lady who was like, if when we lose our fear, they lose their power. That was that same day. And I remember, though I didn't see the actual, I saw the footage later. is when I was just like, oh my gosh, this lady is saying something.
Yes.
And it's something so profound, although people are not understanding it now, but me, it hit me. I'm like, yeah, we have a lot of fear.
Yes. And it has played a key role in our politics over the years. And I think it goes without saying that that's part of why the culture of the police really relies on brutality, because they've been made to understand the power of fear as a tool.
But isn't that the colonial mindset?
It is, and it's that it used to be the National Police Force. It's supposed to be the National Police Service, but it's a service in name only, for the most part.
Yeah,
For the most part.
their logo, their tagline, utumishi kwa wote.
Yes. And I think this goes back to the issue we were even discussing about the constitution, because it's not just the constitution that is not implemented, it's also a vast array of laws and policies, because many police may not even understand what it means for them to be a service.
Yeah,
There are
that's
many
true.
people across government offices and national institutions that don't think about what their role in those institutions are supposed to achieve. For them, it's a job that they go to, and they're used to a culture. And I think part of our politics, part of why we're doing this podcast,
Yes,
is about unlearning and relearning
yes, and learning,
yes,
and how just to be active, more active citizens. That politically connected, being politically connected is not just the only way to be active.
yes,
And what really politically connected means is being connected to the politics
yes,
of the
because it
day.
affects all of us. No, one thing of the
100%.
constitution about the constitution is we talk about and we emphasize on how our leaders are supposed to uphold the constitution and to defend it, that they swore an oath to protect it. But the bit we miss out is that as citizens,
Yes.
we also have a duty, it's written in the constitution, to defend it.
Yeah.
So we focus a lot on our rights, but we need to start having a conversation about our obligations, because there are no rights without obligations. Yeah.
So how did you get here?
I think we can pick that up with the next episode.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, but in a nutshell, how did we, and when I say we, I mean like how did we as a country get to this moment? Because for me, if I look back, in this moment, we are seeing lethargy because we had such a very fiery June 2024, and also July seemed to also be remnants of that fire. And then here we are in August, and people expected some sort of change.
I think Kenyans are not society. Kenyans are very by and large, and that's why we have long periods of being an oasis of peace. And I think as much as people have been angry and disappointed, they are aware that a number of things have changed. The finance bill was not implemented as it was. There were changes. The cabinet was dismissed.
Actually, the finance bill was not. Let me stop you there. Was rejected.
Yes.
Lakini saisi nimesikia wameirudisha.
Well, they're considering certain elements of it.
Okay.
I don't think it was the entire finance bill, though it was important to reject it, all of it at the time. But as a country, we do need revenue raising measures. And as it is.
But must they be punitive?
No, they mustn't. And I think those are the elements that are being reviewed, and we have to wait and see what elements.
Actually, niko na swali chaka. Do you think easy bills, are they being drafted in Kenyans? And are they, even if they're being drafted in Kenya, are they really for Kenyans? Kama hiyo ni ya episode nyingine. It's a whole
The simple answer is, for the most part, no.
No.
Yeah, and I think that goes to the issue of the fact that there are levels. There are other players in our politics that most Kenyans may not even be aware of. We look at Kenya internally, but we're also part of a global village and a global community, and there are stakeholders that
Very
sit
powerful
elsewhere.
stakeholders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's why it's so important for us to be involved so that we're not just pawns in one big game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, before we close, maybe you can tell us what is one of your best memories in our political history.
Wow.
That you connect to, because this is politically connected. The dots need to connect.
Yeah, to be honest, I go back to the promulgation. I've had other moments since then, but the promulgation of the Constitution, I can still remember being there, standing there. I can remember the excitement of the crowd being infectious. I can remember looking at the dais from a distance. I remember singing the national anthem in a way that I'd never heard before or since, the flag going up. That that was truly a key moment for me. Yeah. What about you? What's a key moment?
I'm battling because I have two, and I don't know which one will be
Carry the day.
yeah, will carry the day. But let me just say one. Um, I think it is the past maandamanos. I feel like the kind of energy that was in the streets, the kind of people, it was all walks of life. Yani, youths from everywhere,
Yes.
from uptown, from downtown, from Eastlands, from Westlands, everywhere. Like
Yes, yeah.
it was, and
It was the face of Kenya.
it was really the face of Kenya. And people, you could be thirsty or you could be fighting for your life because you've just been tear gassed, and anyone will give you a bottle of water. It was something I've never seen before. The energy, the resilience, because constantly being tear gassed and water cannon, and people just kept going and going and going. I feel like for me that was one of the key moments, and I'd say one of also the key moments would be watching the president come onto the screens and his demeanor. I'll never forget it. I felt like I was watching a movie.
Yeah.
And seeing treason as criminals.
Yes.
Well, I feel like my heart just sank into the seat. Like I just said, "What? Like, what the actual hell is happening?" Like, yeah. And I remember that day there was clamor, or rather whispers, "Oh, this is gonna be a state of emergency." And I kept on wondering. I'm like, okay, these are the things we learned in GHC, state of emergency.
Yeah, and I think it's, speaks to how some of our leaders take us for granted. And why that moment was very key is that it forced them to go back to the drawing board and
Yeah.
to realize that we're not pushovers.
Yeah, I remember there's a time, and this is a Thursday. So the first was 18th on a Tuesday, then the Thursday. I remember we were somewhere at INM, and the cops with the horses had come or were approaching, but people were just shouting, "Tuko wengi!"
Yeah.
And I won't lie, we were so many.
Yeah.
It is that for me is
The defining moment.
top two, but not maybe number one. I don't know. I have another one that I'll say in another episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to it.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to the end of episode 1 of Politically Connected. We hope you enjoyed it. Please follow us on all social media platforms. We are on TikTok, we're on X, we're on Instagram, and of course, you'll find the full episode on YouTube. Check out our YouTube.
Politically Connected.
Yes.
Yeah, and when you comment, let us know what you'd like us to discuss, what you'd like to hear about, what you'd like us to unpack or discuss, and guests that you may want us to have on the show. Because at the end of the day, this is a conversation. So we'd like you to engage, participate, don't just spectate.
Indeed, we definitely want to have guests in the show. So we're inviting you. We're inviting you. Like we need to remain connected
Yes.
to the politics of today. Yeah. So see you next time.